Welcome back to tonight's broadcast, a place for stories. Hotels never truly sleep. Even after the lobby grows quiet and the hallways empty, someone must remain behind the front desk, answering telephones, watching security cameras, and responding when a guest needs help. Tonight's first submission comes from a former night clerk who received a call from a room that should have been empty. This is Javier's story. My name is Javier Mendoza. I'm 31 years old and I live in Laredo, Texas. When I was 23, I worked the night shift at a small roadside hotel near the northern edge of town. I had recently moved into my first apartment, and the hotel job gave me enough money to cover rent while I attended classes during the day. The hotel was old but reasonably clean. It had 2 floors, 48 rooms, and exterior corridors facing a large parking lot. The lobby was attached to a small office, laundry room, and employee break area. My shift lasted from 11 at night until 7 in the morning. Most nights were quiet. I checked in late arrivals, prepared receipts, answered the phones, and watched the security monitors. Because we didn't have a security guard, I was the only employee on the property until the morning housekeepers arrived. That bothered me at first, but I eventually became comfortable. The front entrance locked automatically after midnight, and guests had to use their room key or speak to me through an intercom. I also kept the office door locked whenever I stepped away from the desk. The experience I'm about to describe happened on a humid Thursday night in August. Only 19 rooms were occupied. A construction crew had reserved several rooms on the first floor, and a family traveling to San Antonio had checked into 2 rooms near the lobby. The second floor was mostly empty. Room 214 had been out of service for almost 2 months because of a water leak. Part of the wall had been opened during repairs, the carpet had been removed, and the telephone extension had supposedly been disconnected. No guests should have been inside it. Approximately 1:17 in the morning, the front desk telephone rang. The display showed 214. I stared at the number before answering. Front desk, this is Javier. For several seconds, there was only static. Then a man said, I need 2 towels. His voice was quiet and rough. I checked the computer. Room 214 appeared in red, meaning it couldn't be rented. What room are you calling from? I asked. 214. I assumed the telephone system had displayed the wrong extension. I asked for his name. The man ignored the question. Bring the towels inside, he said. The door will be open. I looked at the security monitor showing the second floor corridor. Room 214 was near the far end. Its door appeared closed. I can leave the towels at the front desk, I told him. You can pick them up whenever you're ready. The caller remained silent. Then he said, I can't come downstairs. I asked whether he needed medical assistance. No. What name is the reservation under? The line went dead. I called room 214. The telephone rang through the receiver, but nobody answered. I contacted the occupied rooms on either side. Room 212 was empty. A man answered in 216 and told me everything was quiet. I convinced myself that the call had been caused by a crossed telephone line. Older hotel systems sometimes did strange things. I placed 2 towels on the counter in case the caller came downstairs. A few minutes later, I looked at the monitor again. The housekeeping cart from the laundry room was now parked outside room 214. I hadn't seen anyone move it. I rewound the security recording. At 1:21, the picture flickered and froze for 11 seconds. When it returned, the cart was already there. I checked the other cameras. The first floor hallway and parking lot recording had frozen at exactly the same time. My first thought was that one of the construction workers had gone upstairs and moved the cart as a joke. I called the foreman's room. He answered, sounding half asleep, and told me everyone was inside. While I was speaking to him, the front desk phone lit up again. Room 214. I ended the call with the foreman and answered. The man said, You forgot my towels. I'm not bringing you anything upstairs, I replied. The room is closed. A long silence followed. Then he said my name, Javier. I felt the hair rise on my arms. My name was printed on my badge, but nobody upstairs should have been able to see it. How do you know my name? The man breathed softly into the receiver. You've been sitting there all night. I looked through the glass entrance. The parking lot appeared empty except for the guest's vehicle. Across from the lobby, a security camera faced the front desk through the window. Anyone with access to the monitor system could watch me. I turned towards the office door behind me. Our security recorder was inside a locked cabin in the manager's office. I checked the key cabinet beneath the desk. One master key card was missing. The card was kept in a sealed envelope for emergencies. The envelope had been carefully opened and placed back inside the cabinet. I called my manager, Mr. Rios. He didn't answer. I left a message explaining the situation and called the non-emergency police number. The dispatcher advised me to stay behind the desk and said an officer would drive through the property. At 1:42, a guest in room 108 called. She said someone had tried opening her door. The guest had heard the lock click several times, followed by the handle moving. When she looked through the peephole, nobody was there. I asked her to engage the security latch and not open the door. Then I called 911. As I spoke to the dispatcher, the alarm sounded on the hotel's laundry room exit. The door could only be opened from inside. The security monitor showed it standing open. Beyond it was a narrow service walkway leading behind the building. No one appeared on camera. The telephone rang again, and I didn't answer it. It stopped and immediately rang again. The display showed 214. The dispatcher told me to remain on the line and lock myself inside the back office. I grabbed the office key and moved away from the desk. Before I reached the door, every security monitor went black. The lobby lights flickered. Then the internal telephone rang from the office behind me. The telephone did not receive guest calls unless they were manually transferred from the front desk. I had not transferred anything. I entered the office, locked the door, and pushed a filing cabinet against it. The phone on the desk continued ringing. After the sixth ring, it stopped. A few seconds later, I heard the lobby entrance open. The door should have been locked. Someone walked across the tile. The footsteps stopped behind the front desk. The caller was inside the lobby. I whispered this to the dispatcher. She told me the officers were less than 5 minutes away. The office doorknob turned very slowly. It stopped, then turned again. 3 quiet knocks followed. Javier. It was the voice from room 214. I only wanted the towels. I remained silent. Something slid through the gap between the door. It was the missing master keycard. The man tapped the door again. Open it. You can have your card back. The handle moved a third time. Then I heard a scraping sound near the lock. It was using some kind of tool. I held the filing cabinet in place while the dispatcher kept talking to me. The scraping became more forceful. Wood cracked around the door frame. The man stopped and said, "You shouldn't have called them." Red and blue lights appeared through the office blinds. The pressure against the door vanished and footsteps ran across the lobby. A rear alarm began sounding near the laundry room. Officers entered through the front while another patrol vehicle drove around the building. They searched the lobby, laundry room, and exterior corridors. The man was gone. The laundry exit opened onto a strip of brush behind the property. Beyond that was a frontage road and several acres of undeveloped land. Police brought me outside while they searched room 214. Its door was unlocked. Inside, they found a mattress on the floor, canned food, bottled water, and clothing. Someone had been living there. The damaged wall opened into a narrow maintenance space running behind several second-floor rooms. The space contained pipes, electrical wiring, and access panels that had been installed when the hotel was built. A person could move behind the room and enter the laundry area without using the main corridor. The telephone in room 214 had been reconnected by splicing it into an active line. Police also found stolen key cards, several guest wallets, and copies of employee schedules. My name was circled on 3 schedules. Beside it, someone had written the nights I usually work alone. Investigators identified the intruder through fingerprints found on the telephone. He was a former maintenance employee named Ernesto, who had been fired nearly a year earlier after guests complained about belongings disappearing from their rooms. Because he understood the electrical and security system, he knew how to interrupt the cameras and unlock service doors. Police believe he had been entering the hotel for several weeks. They thought the calls from room 214 were intended to lure me away from the lobby so he could steal the cash drawer and master keys. That explanation made sense until an officer told me something else found in the room. Near the mattress were a nylon cord, heavy tape, and a large duffel bag. The officer said there was no way to prove what Ernesto intended to do with them. 3 weeks later, he was arrested after breaking into another motel south of San Antonio. He eventually pleaded guilty to burglary and several theft charges. I never learned whether he admitted making the calls. I resigned from the hotel the following morning. For several months, I couldn't sleep if a telephone was in the room with me. An unexpected call after midnight made my stomach tighten. Today, I work during normal daytime hours. I still stay in hotels when I travel, but I always check the hallways, engage the security latch, and look behind the bathroom door before going to sleep. Whenever I pass a quiet hotel late at night, I think about the person sitting alone at the front desk. Most people assume an empty hotel room is truly empty. I know that isn't true. Sometimes the most dangerous guest is the one who never checked in. Our second submission involves an older hotel, a sealed floor, and an elevator that repeatedly traveled somewhere it was no longer supposed to reach. Elena never saw anyone that night. She only heard the elevator chime, the wheels of a housekeeping cart, and footsteps coming from an abandoned hallway. This is Elena's story. My name is Elena Salazar. I'm 27 years old, and I live in Brownsville, Texas. 3 years ago, I worked as a night auditor for an old hotel near downtown. The building had originally opened during the 1930s. It had arched windows, tiled floor, dark wooden furniture, and one antique elevator with brass doors. Guests loved the history of the place. I didn't. Old buildings make noises that newer buildings don't. Pipes knock inside the walls. Wooden floors shift when the temperature changes. Doors swell during humid weather and open by themselves when the latches become worn. Working there taught me that almost every frightening noise has a normal explanation. The hotel officially had 3 guest floors. However, the building was actually 4 stories tall. The 4th floor had been closed after an electrical fire and water damage during the 1960s. Repairs were considered too expensive, so the stairwell was locked and the floor was removed from the hotel's advertising. A metal plate covered the 4th floor button inside the elevator. Only the general manager and maintenance supervisor had keys capable of removing the plate and activating the floor. I worked from 11 at night until 7 in the morning. Most shifts were uneventful. I balanced the accounts, prepared checkout documents, and helped guests who needed towels or replacement keys. The experience I'm about to describe happened during a rainy Sunday night in June. There were fewer than 30 guests in the building. At approximately 2:05, I heard the elevator chime. The brass doors open. No one stepped out. I could see the entire lobby from the front desk, and no guests had entered the elevator. The car remained open for several seconds before closing. I assumed someone on the 3rd floor had pressed the button and walked away. 10 minutes later, it happened again. The elevator returned to the lobby and opened empty. This time, I noticed that the inside of the car felt unusually cold. The rest of the hotel was warm and humid because of the rain, but cold air drifted out of the elevator. It smelled like wet carpet and smoke. I pressed the button from the 3rd floor, expecting the doors to close. They remained open. Then the old indicator above the elevator began moving. The needle passed 1, then 2, then 3. It continued into the empty space beyond the final number. The elevator's door closed. I watched the indicator remain above the number 3 for nearly a minute. Then the needle descended. The elevator returned to the lobby and opened again. Nobody was inside. I called Tomas, our maintenance supervisor. He answered after several rings, and I explained what had happened. He said the elevator couldn't access the 4th floor because its control switch was turned off inside the locked maintenance cabinet. He believed the indicator was malfunctioning. Before hanging up, he told me something unusual. If it goes up again, don't get inside. His tone was serious. I asked why. Tomas paused. Because the floor isn't safe. At 2:43, I heard wheels moving somewhere above the lobby. They sounded like a housekeeper's cart rolling slowly across uneven carpet. The noise traveled from one side of the ceiling to the other. The 3rd floor hallway was directly above me, so I checked at the security cameras. The corridor was empty. All housekeeping carts were locked inside the 1st floor supply room. The rolling stopped directly above the elevator. A moment later, the elevator chimed. Its doors opened in the lobby. An old brass room key lay in the center of the car. Our hotel had stopped using metal keys years before I began working there. Guests use electronic cards. The oval tag attached to the key was marked 417. I picked it up. It was cold and damp. I placed it on the front desk and called Tomas again. This time, he didn't answer. While leaving him a message, the hotel's internal telephone console lit up. Room 417 was calling the front desk. That room didn't appear in our reservation system. The 4th floor rooms had been removed from it years earlier. I left the telephone ringing. After 6 rings, it stopped. Then I heard 3 knocks from inside the elevator. The doors were closed. I stepped away from the desk. The doors opened. The elevator was empty. The key to room 417 was no longer on the desk. It had returned to the elevator floor. I considered waking the manager, but I was embarrassed. Everything had happened quickly, and I worried that exhaustion was affecting me. I walked to the elevator but remained outside it. The old indicator pointed to the lobby. I leaned inside and reached for the key. The moment I picked it up, the doors closed behind me. I pressed the lobby button, but nothing happened. The elevator began rising. It passed the 2nd floor, then the 3rd. The metal plate covering the 4th floor button vibrated. Something clicked behind it. The elevator stopped. The doors opened onto the sealed 4th floor. Only one light worked in the corridor. The wallpaper was peeling. The dark water stains covered the ceiling. Dust lay across the carpet. An old housekeeping cart stood against the wall. At the far end of the hallway was room 417. Its door was slightly open. Fresh, wet footprints marked the carpet between the room and the elevator. They came toward me. They did not lead back. I repeatedly pressed the lobby button. The doors refused to close. Then I heard a wheel turn. The housekeeping cart moved several inches, then stopped. One wheel squeaked, then another. The cart began rolling down the hallway, but there was no visible person pushing it. The wheels moved slowly at first. The door to room 417 opened a little wider. Something knocked from inside the room 3 times. The cart began moving faster. I held the closed door button with both hands. The elevator's door finally responded. As they came together, the cart rolled into the working light. It was still empty. The doors closed before it reached the elevator. The car dropped so suddenly that I nearly fell. When it opened in the lobby, I ran out. I used the emergency key beneath the front desk to disable the elevator and lock the brass doors. Then I called the general manager and told him I was waiting outside until someone arrived. I stood beneath the covered entrance, watching the rain. At 3:26, the elevator chimed behind me. The emergency key was still in my hand. Through the lobby window, I watched the brass doors open. The elevator was empty. The key to room 417 lay on its floor. A line of damp footprints crossed the elevator threshold and stopped in the middle of the lobby. I remained outside until the manager and Tomas arrived shortly before 4. Tomas checked the electrical cabinet. The fourth floor switch was off. A padlock still secured it. According to him, the elevator could not have traveled to that floor without the switch being activated manually. The three of us used the lock stairwell to inspect the fourth floor after sunrise. The wet footprints were still visible. They began outside room 417 and ended at the elevator. The room itself was locked. Tomas opened it using the old brass key. Inside, most of the ceiling had collapsed. An unused bed frame leaned against the wall, and the carpet was covered with dust. There was no person inside. There was also no water leak that could explain the footprints. The housekeeping cart stood against the wall near the elevator. Tomas said it had been stored inside room 417 when the floor was closed. Someone or something had moved it into the hallway. Later, the manager told me why Tomas had warned me not to enter the elevator. During the fire that closed the fourth floor, a night housekeeper named Teresa had gone back upstairs after someone reported knocking inside room 417. She became trapped when smoke entered the service stairwell. She died before firefighters could reach her. Several former employees claimed that the elevator sometimes traveled to the fourth floor during rainy nights. The manager had always dismissed those stories. After my experience, the elevator company inspected the entire system. They found no mechanical explanation. The technician also confirmed that the car couldn't reach the fourth floor while the switch was turned off and padlocked. I completed 2 more shifts, but only during the day. Then I resigned. The hotel remained open for several years before being sold and renovated. I don't know whether the fourth floor was ever reopened. I still use elevators, but I never stand inside one after everyone else has stepped out. If the doors open on a floor I didn't choose, I keep my eyes forward and wait for them to close. And whenever I hear the wheels of a housekeeping cart moving through a hotel corridor late at night, I remember that empty fourth floor. I remember the footprints that came towards the elevator but never went back. Most of all, I remember the warning Tomas gave me. Don't get inside. I wish I had listened. Thank you for listening to tonight's broadcast, A Place for Stories. If you enjoyed tonight's broadcast, please subscribe and tell me in the comments which story frightened you the most. Until next time, remember to lock your doors and always check the hallway. Until the shadows call again. Good night.